Welcome to the very end of our online course. Hi, David.
Good morning, evening, Bart. I'm pretty excited because we've been moving towards this at a breakneck speed. So
Yeah,
congratulations to everybody who's made it through whatever sections of the course you've come through.
this is quite an achievement, don't you think?
Yeah, because we've been introducing something that in some respects can be monumental, but in a very subtle yet obvious way if someone's willing to embrace these concepts and skills and tools.
Let's use this opportunity to summarize some key concepts, some takeaways that we think are of importance.
Yeah, and I think that in doing this little wrap up will help people deal with the whole question of adoption and how can I embrace this and integrate this and weave this into my life with all the people that I work with.
Yeah, exactly. And we know it's not easy, but it can be a game changer for you if you approach it right with your team. So without further ado, David, can you walk us through the model that we co-created before recording this episode?
Yeah, I think this is a great summary. We've put it into a wheel or a circle format. And like a lot of wheels, it starts at the very center, recognizing that we as human beings are individually highly variable. We're both emotional and intellectual or rational, and that our neurology, how we think and respond to the world, is wired to what we see, both outside us and inside us. And that hard wiring is not something we ever learned about in school. We don't know all the steps that go on at, lightning speed in our minds, but it works, right? And so we take that fundamental, fact of life that we didn't really even learn in school because it was just so natural and automatic. And we say, how do we improve whatever we're working on, whatever trying to accomplish, whatever challenges and problems we're facing?
And that's why in the course, we had a pleasure and fun as well to cover those 6 situations where we tried to do our best to explain the benefits of digital visual literacy. And we spoke about tips, tricks, and methods for each of these that you see here: one-way sharing, brainstorming, larger and smaller workshops or webinars, vision sharing, problem solving, and the one that we call independent collective idea contribution, IC square.
So, backing out from our diagram, if we consider that visual thinking is at the root of our thinking, right? And if we're not thinking visually, we may be limiting ourselves in some way. So applying that to these 6 situations and all of life, let's just look at how the process of adoption can happen and does happen when we take in a new technology or a new way of doing something. We basically learn that we need to connect with each other in any way we can, right? We need to get on the same page and share the context. And out of that, we know that we have the capability of finding ways to do things. We come up with, where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Yeah. And we often employ visuals when doing so. So here's a little example that might seem familiar to many. So this is not new to people, right? We do find our ways and we support ourselves with visuals. But we face challenges when doing so.
Yeah, and sometimes just to touch back on that first step, and the ways that we have become routine or become habit. They weren't at first, but they do. And that's what we're facing as well in these challenges, is how to break the habits that might have been limiting us and go on to new methods, which at first seem very, very challenging. So in the process of doing that, in step 3, we find that we have to exchange different perspectives, possibilities, experiences. And that gives us the opportunity and the openness to work together to create new things, right? To ideate, to exchange visions and different visions and perspectives and possibilities and experiences. That's, again, where storytelling really comes in handy. And out of that, we create new solutions and we learn how to clarify them. We learn how to refine.
And in the course, we mentioned this process looks like taking a mental picture that you have from your brain and put it out there to the digital canvas to share with others, to exchange and ideate together, to explore together. So it's not kept in your head only, but it's also something that you can share.
Right. And that is quite transformative, to take something that's invisible in your mind and create a vision of that other people can then use and expand on, right? That's pretty powerful.
It is.
To make things clearer, to change your point of view so that you were seeing it this way, and then you can walk around and see it from a completely different way. That is a powerful transformational possibility right there.
But in most cases, we're limited to the interface that we often use. These are words, verbal expressions. So we need different tools.
The words are definitely awesome, and they're approximations of reality. They're not reality. Pictures are a lot closer to reality than words. So in the course of looking at, well, how do we do all this? How do we adopt this new technology, these new tools? How do we build these skills? What could motivate us is that we're really going to leverage this power that we have. And it could take some time. It could involve some practice. We might have to stumble a little and experience some frustration. But in the longer run, that leverage is going to be way more powerful and useful to us than not having it.
Because what we gain is this ability to be more clear, more precise, more on point. So it's something we called your hidden superpower that you gain by adding visuals to your regular expression, the ways you usually express yourself.
Even just being ready to ask the question,
yeah,
what does that look like to you? Or how do you see that? Is a very powerful tool. So we get to this point where, wow, this could really do a lot for me, or I think this could do a lot for me. What's going to get us like through the door, through the threshold of really starting to work on this? And that's a big question, right?
Yeah. And it's a tough one. It's a tough one. But I believe at this point of the course, you might already be convinced that it's something that it's worth trying. So the question is, to find the right motivation and the right way to approach this transition.
We're going to show you that it could be a lot easier than you think. It's really it's the starting of an important conversation. And to, not have any hesitation, because it's years to begin with. As we saw, we're already, all of us, just by virtue that you're watching this, we're already in those steps to being more digitally, visually literate.
Yeah.
And what Bart and I are wanting to do is to help with that support piece and that interaction piece to make that transition earlier, easier for you. So just, as an example of how we used the process, why don't we show people where this model
from where this model comes from, right? Yes. And you came up with this original concept of the things that we should cover when doing the epilogue for the course, but it was not looking anything like what you see now. It was rather closer to this, which is great, but less structured, right? Full of ideas, a lot of handwriting, I see.
Yeah, it was pretty crude.
It was fun, but that was the starting point for our interaction. So what we did over the course of what, an hour? I guess it was an hour, right?
I think it was less, but my sense of time can be distorted.
Because we like the process so much. We iterated and we changed a lot, and we discussed those concepts to move from this model to something more structured, but still not ready. And then we worked on this and we arrived at this model, which looks very similar to the one that we're using. So at the end of our conversation, we arrive at the model that you see here, which is an outcome of our collaboration.
You added a lot of objectivity and some design elements, and we did it together, sharing the same board, and it didn't take very long, and it just kept getting better and better and better. So it's a great example of the stages, the steps, and the possibilities that we're talking about, and making collaboration, very real and a whole lot easier.
What I love about it is that we're using a communication tool. We're using Explainer Everything, or you could be using Mural or Miro, but it's essentially a whiteboard. We're not using any sophisticated illustration tool to arrive at results that are aesthetically okay and were quickly accomplished.
It didn't take days. It took less than an hour.
So knowing all that, why don't we speak more about how we can be helpful in your adoption of digital visual literacy? Shall we, David?
Let's do that. Well, look at this, Bart. We happen to have a visual.
Unbelievable. It looks like we're using whiteboard for every possible occasion.
Well, it is possible to visualize things, Bart, like all the time.
Yeah. So what are the steps? Walk us through the steps. How can we be helpful to you?
Well, I think it's pretty simple, and it's right here. Step one would be, if you're feeling motivated enough about DVL, then we would urge you to explore it and discuss it and share it in some fashion with your team, because no matter what the change is, whether it's technology adoption or any other behavior or thinking change, you have to look at readiness. It's a major factor.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes readiness has to do with spending money, investing time, whether people have too much on their plate, etc. So it's just a major factor.
And if you're already convinced that there's a sufficient value in discussing DVL, we obviously know that your situation might be quite specific. So it's a good thing to speak with practitioners about it, right?
Yep. We'd love that. So get in touch with us, drop us a line, make an appointment in Calendly, reach out to us, and we will respond.
You can find us at DVL Expert website.
So once you get in touch with us, make that connection and that appointment, we will use our visualization tool to have a conversation, 30 minutes or less, where we can ask you questions, have a dialogue, and record your, some really salient points about your team's situation and make some suggestions to you.
And if you don't want to use whiteboards during that connection, don't worry, we will.
Right, because we want to give you, as well as ourselves, some real perspective about the kinds of needs you have, challenges you're facing, and the benefits you want to see out of this. Oh, and at the end of our conversation, we'll give you some suggestions about how to ease into and manage this adoption. Really concrete suggestions for integrating everything we've shown you about DVL and getting that value from those skills and tools and principles and tips.
So as you see, we want to make this adoption easier for you and more fun, right?
Absolutely. If it's not fun, it's not going to be fun. And it's probably not going to be easier. So that's the mark.
David, thank you for co-creating and co-leading this entire online course with me. It was fun. It was great. And I think we tried to explore not easy concepts, right? We tried to push the envelope a bit.
And we did. This thing was a real stretch for me. And if you, the listener, also feel stretched, well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a great sign, because that's where the growth is, right? It's when you're leaning into the challenge.
It was also out of comfort zone for us.
Indeed it was. And so we want to be there for you to support whatever adoption of the principles and the skills, the tools, the tips, the quote unquote tricks that you want. Let us help you.
Good luck being more visual. Thank you.
Welcome to the canvas.
And see you there next time in person.
Indeed.